The words hang in the air between us like something physical, sharp, dangerous, impossible to unsee. I stand in the doorway of Samantha's dining room, my homemade blackberry pie trembling slightly in my hands. "Mom," Samantha repeats, her voice low but slicing clean through the polite dinner chatter. "I think you're not our kind. This dinner is for family and close friends." She glances nervously toward her in-laws at the head of the table. Elaine Carter, my daughter's mother-in-law, doesn't even pretend not to listen. She sips her wine, a slight smirk playing at the corner of her lips. Her husband, Robert, adjusts his collar, looking everywhere but at me. My son-in-law, David, suddenly finds something fascinating in the pattern of his dinner plate. "I brought pie," I say, my voice sounding far away, like it belongs to someone else. "Your favorite, blackberry." For a moment, something flickers in Samantha's eyes. The girl who used to climb into my lap during thunderstorms, who cried against my shoulder when her father died, who made me hand-drawn Mother's Day cards long after her classmates had switched to store-bought. Then her gaze hardens again, sliding toward Elaine. "That's thoughtful, but we have a dessert planned," she says. "Maybe you could save it for another time." The pie feels suddenly heavy in my hands. I spent 3 hours making it this morning, picking the last blackberries from my garden, making the crust from scratch using Jacob's mother's recipe, the one Samantha always requested for her birthdays. No one at the table speaks up. No one says, "Oh, let Pat join us." No one even looks uncomfortable at the naked cruelty of the moment. They just continue eating, the scrape of silver against china filling the terrible silence. "Of course," I managed to say. "I didn't mean to interrupt." I carefully set the pie on the sideboard, my hands steadier than I expected. Then I turn and walk out through the kitchen, past the coat rack where my old beige cardigan looks shabby against their cashmere and wool. Outside, the October evening has turned chilly. I climb into my 15-year-old Corolla, the one Jacob and I bought the year before he died, the one I've maintained with religious care ever since. My hands shake now as I grip the steering wheel, but I don't cry. Not yet. The 20-minute drive home passes in a blur. The modest neighborhoods grow more modest as I leave the gated community where Samantha and David bought their new house, returning to the part of town where teachers, nurses, and librarians like me make their homes, where Jacob and I raised our daughter in a small 3-bedroom ranch with a vegetable garden out back and mismatched furniture we lovingly collected over decades. When I pull into my driveway, the porch light I left on casts a welcoming glow. Inside, the house is exactly as I left it, slightly worn but clean, filled with books and plants, and the quilt Jacob's grandmother made for our wedding. I don't turn on the lights. Instead, I sink onto the couch in the darkness, the events of the evening finally catching up to me. "You're not our kind." 5 words to erase 35 years of motherhood. 5 words to sever the bond I thought unbreakable. Maybe I should have seen it coming. The signs were there. Samantha's increasingly infrequent visits after she married David 3 years ago. The way she stopped bringing him to Sunday dinners. Her vague excuses about why I couldn't see their new house until tonight. Her subtle criticisms of my clothes, my speech, my simple home. But nothing prepared me for this, for being dismissed like an embarrassing relic, something to be hidden away, denied, forgotten. In the quiet darkness of my living room, memories flood back unbidden. Samantha at 6, proudly reading me her first book. At 12, falling asleep against my shoulder during a late-night drive home from her grandmother's funeral. At 17, nervous and excited as we toured college campuses, the first in our family to attend university. At 23, walking down the aisle in my reworked wedding dress, Jacob's absence a physical ache we both felt. Where did I lose her? When did our kind become something she didn't want to be anymore? The phone rings, startling me from my thoughts. Nancy's name flashes on the caller ID. "How was the big dinner?" my oldest friend asks when I answer. "Did you finally get to see the fancy new house?" I open my mouth to respond, but instead of words, a sob escapes. The first tear falls, then another, then a flood I can't control. "Pat? What happened?" Nancy's voice sharpens with concern. She asked me to leave." I manage between sobs. "In front of everyone. Said I wasn't their kind." Nancy's silence speaks volumes. When she finally responds, her voice is tight with anger. "That girl, after everything you've done for her, everything you sacrificed." "Maybe I embarrassed her," I whisper, hating the insecurity in my voice. My clothes, my accent. "Stop that right now," Nancy interrupts. "There is nothing wrong with you. Nothing. You worked 30 years helping children learn to love books. You raised a daughter alone after Jacob died. You paid for her college with overtime and second jobs." Her voice softens. "If Samantha is ashamed of you, that reflects on her character, not yours." I know she's right, but the wound is too fresh for logic to heal. "I should sleep," I say finally. "I'm just tired." "I'm coming over tomorrow," Nancy declares. "First thing, and Pat, remember who you are. Remember what Jacob would say." After we hang up, I sit for a long time in the quiet house. On the mantel, Jacob smiles from our wedding photo, his eyes crinkling at the corners the way they always did when he looked at me. "My Pat," he used to say. "Solid as they come, worth more than gold." Would he recognize our daughter now? The girl we raised to value character over wealth, kindness over status? Night deepens around me as I finally rise and move to the bedroom. I change into my nightgown, brush my teeth, go through the motions of my evening routine while feeling hollow inside. As I lie down, I realize the blackberry pie is still sitting on Samantha's sideboard, untouched and unwanted, like me. Sleep eludes me as I stare at the ceiling, replaying the humiliation over and over. Wondering what happens now. Wondering if I've truly lost my only child to a world that has no place for mothers with calloused hands and modest homes. Tomorrow will come with its own decisions, its own pain. But tonight, I allow myself to grieve. Not just for the dinner I missed, but for the daughter who once knew exactly what our kind meant. People who loved fiercely, lived honestly, and never judged anyone's worth by the label on their clothes or the address on their mailbox. People like Jacob and me. People I thought we'd raised Samantha to be. Sleep comes in fitful bursts. Each time I drift off, I hear Samantha's voice again. "You're not our kind." I wake before dawn, my pillow damp with tears I don't remember crying. The morning light seems harsh, unforgiving as it streams through my kitchen window. I move mechanically through my routine. Coffee brewing, toast in the toaster, the radio playing softly in the background. The weatherman promises a beautiful fall day, oblivious to the storm raging inside my heart. Nancy arrives just after 9, letting herself in with the spare key she's had since Jacob died. She takes one look at me, still in my robe, eyes swollen from crying, and wraps me in a fierce hug. "I brought reinforcements," she says, holding up a paper bag. "Cinnamon rolls from Henderson's Bakery." The small kindness nearly undoes me again. Nancy guides me to the kitchen table, pours us both coffee, and sits across from me. Unlike Elaine Carter with her perfect coiffure and designer clothes, Nancy is all practical comfort. Salt and pepper hair in a sensible bob, jeans and a sweatshirt, weathered hands that have raised 3 children and tended countless garden beds. "Start from the beginning," she says gently. "Tell me everything." So I do. The invitation that came last week, the first in months. My excitement at finally seeing Samantha's new house. The hours spent choosing what to wear, settling on my navy dress with the scalloped collar. The nicest thing in my closet. The way David barely acknowledged me when had he opened the door. The elaborate table setting that made my handmade pie look woefully out of place. And finally, Samantha's cutting words and the silent complicity of everyone present. Nancy listens without interrupting, though I can see the anger building in her eyes. When I finish, she reaches across the table to squeeze my hand. "What are you going to do?" she asks. "What can I do?" I respond, staring into my coffee. "You can't force someone to want you in their life. You can demand respect," Nancy counters firmly. "You can refuse to be treated this way." The phone rings before I can respond. We both stare at it, watching Samantha's name flash on the caller ID. I make no move to answer. "You don't have to talk to her yet," Nancy says quietly. "I know." I let it ring until voicemail picks up. Almost immediately, it rings again. And again. On the 4th call, I finally reach for it, more to stop the jarring sound than anything else. "Hello?" My voice sounds strange to my own ears, flat, devoid of its usual warmth. "Mom?" Samantha sounds breathless, agitated. "I've been calling all morning. Are you okay?" The question strikes me as absurd. "Am I okay?" I repeat. "Why wouldn't I be?" I wanted to check on you. After last night." She pauses. I know things were a little awkward. Awkward? As if she'd simply forgotten to introduce me to someone rather than deliberately humiliating me in front of her new family. "I'm fine," I lie. Nancy's eyes on me as I speak. "Just busy." "Oh." Samantha sounds uncertain now. "I was thinking maybe we could have lunch. Just us. To talk." Part of me, the mother who has always forgiven every slight, who has made excuses for every missed birthday call and forgotten anniversary, wants to agree immediately. But something else rises up inside me. Something that feels like the ghost of Jacob's protective anger. "I don't think so, Samantha. Not today." "Mom, please." Her voice cracks slightly. "I need to see you." "Why? I'm not your kind, remember?" The words slip out before I can stop them, sharper than I intended. Silence stretches across the line. Then so quietly, I almost miss it. "Please. I made a terrible mistake." Against my better judgment, curiosity stirs. "What happened?" I can't talk about it over the phone. She sounds close to tears now. "Please, Mom. Just an hour. I'll come to you." Nancy is watching me intently, clearly hearing both sides of the conversation. She makes a slashing motion across her throat. "Don't do it." But I find myself saying, "Fine. 1 hour. This afternoon." After we hang up, Nancy doesn't bother hiding her disapproval. "That girl crushed you last night, and you're giving her another chance to do it again this afternoon." "She's my daughter," I say simply. "And you're a human being deserving of basic respect." Nancy stands, gathering her purse. "I have to get to my doctor's appointment, but I'm calling you after. And Pat? Don't let her off the hook too easily. Whatever happened, she needs to truly understand what she did to you." After Nancy leaves, I shower and dress, choosing comfortable clothes rather than trying to impress anyone. My simple jeans and cardigan are a quiet statement. This is who I am. Take it or leave it. The house feels too quiet as I wait. I find myself at the mantel, looking at family photographs. Samantha's graduation, her wedding day, the 3 of us, Jacob, Samantha, and me at the beach when she was 10. Happy moments that feel like they belong to someone else's life now. The doorbell rings at precisely 2 o'clock. When I open it, I barely recognize my daughter. Samantha stands on my porch looking nothing like the polished, confident woman who dismissed me last night. Her hair is pulled back in a messy ponytail, her face bare of makeup, her eyes red-rimmed and swollen. She's wearing jeans and an old UNC sweatshirt I haven't seen in years. Mom. Her voice breaks on the single syllable. Then, without warning, she crumples forward, sobbing so hard her whole body shakes. Instinctively, I step forward to catch her, maternal reflexes overriding my hurt. But I stop myself from pulling her into the house right away. Instead, I stand in the doorway, one hand on her trembling shoulder, as she cries on my front porch. "What happened?" I ask, when her sobs quiet enough for speech. She looks up at me, mascara streaked down her cheeks, looking suddenly very young and lost. "Everything," she whispers. "Everything fell apart. And it's all my fault." I search her face, looking for manipulation, for the calculated charm she's sometimes used to get her way. But all I see is genuine despair and something that looks like shame. "Come inside," I finally say, stepping back to make room for her to enter. "I'll make some tea." She follows me into the house like a chastened child, her usual confidence nowhere to be seen. As I fill the kettle, I wonder what could possibly have happened in less than 24 hours to transform my daughter so completely. Whatever it is, I remind myself to keep Nancy's warning in mind. Some hurts run too deep for easy forgiveness, even between mother and daughter. The kettle whistles, its shrill cry filling the silent kitchen. I pour water over tea bags in the mismatched mugs that have survived decades of daily use. One from Samantha's high school graduation, the other a Father's Day gift to Jacob that I've kept all these years. Samantha sits at our small kitchen table, the same one where she did homework, where we celebrated birthdays, where we held each other after Jacob's funeral. Her eyes trace the familiar surroundings, the faded curtains I sewed when we first bought the house, the refrigerator covered with magnets from places we visited together, the uneven tile floor Jacob always meant to replace. For once, she doesn't look at our modest home with barely concealed embarrassment. Instead, she seems to be drinking it in, like something precious she'd forgotten. I set her mug in front of her. "Talk to me," I say, keeping my voice neutral. "What happened after I left?" Samantha wraps her hands around the steaming mug as if seeking its warmth. "The dinner continued," she says softly, like nothing had happened, like you hadn't even been there. The casual cruelty of this strikes me anew. I take a deep breath, refusing to show how much it still hurts. "I wanted to run after you," she continues. "As soon as the words left my mouth, I knew." She breaks off, shaking her head. "But I didn't. I just sat there and ate salmon while my mother walked out the door." "Why?" The question is simple but loaded with everything between us. She meets my eyes, then looks away. "Because I'm a coward. Because I've spent 3 years trying to become someone the Carters would accept." Her voice drops to a whisper. "Because I thought if I could just belong in their world, it would all be worth it." "And was it?" I ask, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "No." She lets out a bitter laugh. "Not even close. After you left, they showed me exactly who they really are and what they really think of me. My curiosity overrides my hurt." "What do you mean?" Samantha takes a shaky breath. "At first, everything seemed normal. We ate. We talked about David's father's new boat, Elaine's charity committee." Her hands tighten around the mug. "Then this morning we had brunch at their country club. On the way there, David started critiquing me. Something in her tone makes my maternal instincts prickle with alarm. Critiquing how? My table manners. She swallows hard. Apparently, I hold my fork like someone who learned to eat in a diner. He said Elaine had noticed at dinner and mentioned it to him afterward. I remember all the family meals at our kitchen table, the simple manners I'd taught her. Please and thank you. Napkin in lap. Don't talk with your mouth full. Nothing fancy. Just basics learned from my own mother. Then at the club, it got worse, she continues. Elaine commented on how I pronounce certain words. Too much of an Appalachian accent, apparently. She suggested elocution lessons if I'm serious about being part of their circle. Samantha's voice breaks slightly. David agreed. Said I needed refinement if I was going to represent the Carter name properly. The callousness is shocking, even after last night. What did you say? Nothing, at first. I just sat there, humiliated while they discussed me like some project that needed fixing. She wipes at a tear with the back of her hand. Then, Elaine mentioned you. My heart sinks. What about me? She said I'd made the right decision by asking you to leave. That harsh as it was, sometimes clean breaks are necessary when elevating one's social position. Samantha looks up at me, eyes shimmering with tears. David nodded like it was the most reasonable thing in the world, and suddenly, I saw them. Really saw them. These cold, calculating people who think they're better than everyone else because of their money and their name. And you didn't see that before? I can't help asking, though I keep my tone gentle. I didn't want to, she admits. I was so caught up in trying to belong, in trying to erase where I came from. She looks around the kitchen again. In trying to erase you. The admission hangs between us, raw and painful. Part of me wants to rush in with forgiveness, to erase her guilt and make everything better, like I've done her entire life. But Nancy's words echo in my mind. Don't let her off the hook too easily. What happened then? I ask instead. I left, Samantha says simply, in the middle of brunch. I said they were horrible, elitist people, and I never should have chosen them over you. A flash of defiance crosses her face. I told Elaine that my mother's manners might not meet her standards, but at least you taught me not to be cruel. Despite everything, pride flares in my chest, but it's quickly tempered by caution. And David? Her face falls. He didn't defend me, or you. He said I was being hysterical and needed to calm down. She stares into her tea. When I said I was leaving, he didn't even try to stop me. Just said to call when I was thinking rationally again. We sit in silence for a moment, the weight of everything that's happened settling between us. Outside, a neighbor's dog barks, a car door slams. Life continues its ordinary rhythm, oblivious to the seismic shifts happening at my kitchen table. Mom, Samantha finally says, her voice small. I am so sorry. More sorry than I can ever explain. What I did was unforgivable. Why did you do it? I need to understand, need to hear her say it. She doesn't try to evade the question. Because I was ashamed, not of you, she adds quickly. Of myself, of where I came from, of not being good enough. She runs a hand through her messy hair. I thought if I could just be what they wanted, perfect, polished, from the right background, then maybe I wouldn't feel like an imposter anymore. And to do that, you had to erase me. The words hurt to say, but they need to be spoken. Yes. She meets my eyes, her own full of pain. I convinced myself it was just one dinner, Just a small betrayal for a greater good. Her voice cracks. But watching you walk out that door, seeing the hurt in your eyes, there is no greater good that could justify that. Nothing. I study my daughter's face, the face I've loved from the moment the nurse placed her in my arms 35 years ago. I see genuine remorse there, and something else, the beginnings of a hard-won wisdom. Samantha, I say carefully, I appreciate your apology, but this isn't something that can be fixed with a single conversation. I know. She nods, wiping away tears. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, or maybe ever. I needed you to know how sorry I am. What will you do now? I gesture vaguely toward the direction of her house, her husband, the life she's built that doesn't include me. She looks down at her hands. I'm not sure. I can't go back to that house right now. I checked into a hotel near downtown. She hesitates. David called a few times, but I haven't answered. Do you love him? The question catches us both off guard. Samantha considers it seriously. I thought I did. Now I'm not so sure. She twists her wedding ring absently. Maybe I was in love with the idea of him, of the life he represented. The confession hangs in the air between us, honest in a way we haven't been with each other in years. I reach across the table and cover her hand with mine. You have some hard decisions ahead, I say quietly. And while I'll support you however I can, I need you to understand something. I take a deep breath. I can't be your fallback option, the mother you acknowledge only when your other choices have failed. I deserve better than that. Jacob taught me that much. At the mention of her father, Samantha's eyes fill with fresh tears. Dad would be so ashamed of me. He would be disappointed, I correct gently. But your father never stopped loving you. Not even when you disappointed him. That's what parents do. I squeeze her hand once before releasing it. But loving you doesn't mean I have to accept being treated as less than. Not by you, not by the Carters, not by anyone. For perhaps the first time in her adult life, Samantha really sees me. Not as an extension of herself, not as an embarrassing reminder of her modest roots, but as a woman in my own right. A woman with dignity and boundaries. I understand, she says softly. And you're right. You deserve better. The phone rings, startling us both. Nancy right on schedule, checking to make sure I'm okay. I let it go to voicemail. That's Nancy, I explain. She's been worried about me. She was always good to us, Samantha says, a hint of nostalgia in her voice. Remember how she used to bring us casseroles after Dad died? And how she taught me to braid my hair when you were working late shifts? The memories float between us. Easier, happier times when our small world felt complete despite its challenges. Before ambition and shame drove a wedge between mother and daughter. Would you like more tea? I ask, not ready to ask her to leave, but not quite ready to fully embrace her either. Please. She hands me her mug. And Mom. Thank you for letting me in. I wouldn't have blamed you if you hadn't. As I refill our mugs, I realize we're standing at a crossroads. One where forgiveness is possible but not guaranteed. Where love exists, but must be earned anew. The path forward isn't clear, but for the first time in years, we're at least facing the same direction. One day at a time, I tell her, setting the fresh tea on the table. That's how we'll do this, one honest conversation at a time. Samantha nods, understanding the unspoken conditions. No more pretense, no more shame, no more choosing status over substance. Outside, the autumn afternoon begins to fade, shadows lengthening across my small yard, where Samantha once planted marigolds with Jacob, where we celebrated summer birthdays with cheap ice cream and sincere laughter. The world that shaped her, that she tried so hard to escape, now offers a quiet haven from the one she thought she wanted. Whether she'll stay in this simpler world or return to her gilded cage remains to be seen. But today, in this moment, my daughter has come home. Not to the address, but to the truth of who she is and where she came from. Whether she can remain here is the question only time will answer. The kitchen grows darker as afternoon slides toward evening. I turn on the small lamp above the sink, the one Jacob installed when I complained about not being able to see while washing dishes. Its warm glow creates a pocket of light around the table where Samantha and I sit, two women bound by blood and history, separated by choices neither fully understood until now. I should turn on more lights, I say, rising from my chair. No. Samantha stops me with a gentle hand on my arm. I like it like this. It reminds me of when I was little, and you'd let me stay up late at this table, coloring while you paid bills. The memory surprises me. Such a small, ordinary moment for her to have preserved. I settle back into my chair, studying my daughter's face in the gentle light. The polished veneer she's cultivated these past few years has cracked completely, revealing glimpses of the girl I raised. Mom, she says after a long silence, I need to tell you something. About the house. About everything. I'm listening. She takes a deep breath. The house we bought, the one you saw yesterday. We can't afford it. Not really. She stares into her tea. David's family helped with the down payment, but the mortgage is crushing us. He's been gambling on risky investments, trying to keep up with his parents' lifestyle. This revelation doesn't shock me as much as it might have. I've seen it before. Young couples stretching beyond their means, chasing appearances instead of security. The dinner last night, she continues, was partly to impress his parents, to convince them David deserves a bigger position in the family business. Her voice drops. He said having you there would undermine the image we were trying to project. The hurt is fresh again, but I keep my expression neutral. And you agreed. I did. She doesn't try to excuse it. I've spent 3 years trying to be what the Carters want. Sophisticated, worldly, connected to the right people. She meets my eyes. I've been pretending my whole life began when I met David, as if everything before that was just an embarrassing prelude. Was it? I ask quietly. Were you embarrassed by our life? By me? Her face crumples. Not of you. Never you. She wipes at fresh tears. I was ashamed of myself, of being the scholarship girl at college, of working checkout jobs while my classmates went on spring break, of not knowing which fork to use at fancy restaurants. You never mentioned feeling that way. How could I? You worked so hard to give me opportunities. How could I tell you I still felt like I didn't belong? She twists her wedding ring again. Then I met David, and suddenly doors opened. The right connections, the right clubs, the right future. I thought if I just followed the rules, if I became who they wanted me to be, I'd finally feel like I belonged. And last night? Asking me to leave? The ultimate test of loyalty. Her voice breaks. David said if I was serious about being a Carter, I needed to make a choice. The life we were building, or the life I came from. I absorbed this, the deliberate cruelty of it. He actually asked you to choose between your husband and your mother? Not in those exact words. He said your presence would complicate the narrative, that his parents might reconsider their support if they saw... She trails off. If they saw how ordinary we are. I finish for her. If they saw how I didn't come from money or connections, if they realized I was just a small-town girl who got lucky. She shakes her head. I was so afraid of losing everything I'd gained that I was willing to lose what actually mattered. The confession hangs between us, honest, in its starkness. I think of Jacob, of what he would say in this moment. He was never a man of many words, but the ones he chose mattered. Your father once told me, I begin slowly, that the truest measure of wealth is who sits with you at your kitchen table when times are hard. I gesture to the worn surface between us. This table has seen us through a lot. Your father's death, your college acceptances, your first heartbreak. It's not fancy, but it's always been a place of truth. I remember, she whispers. Dad used to say our house was rich in the things that counted. He did. The memory warms me even now. Jacob wasn't a complicated man, but he understood what matters. I forgot that, Samantha admits. Somewhere along the way, I started believing the Carters' version of success. The big house, the country club membership, the right schools for children we don't even have yet. She looks up at me. But this morning at brunch, listening to them critique me, plan how to improve me, I suddenly heard Dad's voice in my head. If they can't see your worth, they're not worth your time. The phrase, one of Jacob's favorites, brings unexpected tears to my eyes. He would say that. He'd be so disappointed in me, she says again. Your father wasn't perfect, Samantha. He made mistakes too. I reach for words that will help her understand. Do you remember that summer he tried to start the landscaping business, when he quit his steady job at the factory? She nods. We ate a lot of spaghetti that summer. We did, because he made a poor choice. He got caught up in the idea of being his own boss, of building something from scratch. I smile at the memory, complicated as it is. When it failed, he was so ashamed he could barely look me in the eye. But we got through it, together. I don't remember you being angry with him. I was at first. We'd worked so hard for stability, and he risked it on a dream that wasn't thought through. I traced the grain of the wooden table with my fingertip. But being angry wouldn't have changed anything. What mattered was what came next. How he picked himself up, went back to the factory, worked overtime to rebuild our savings. Understanding dawns in her eyes. You're saying it's not the mistake that matters, but what I do about it. Exactly. I meet her gaze directly. Samantha, I won't pretend last night didn't hurt me deeply. It did. But what matters now is where you go from here, what kind of person you choose to be. I don't know if I can fix this, she admits. With David, with his family, or even with you. Some things can't be fixed, I say gently. Sometimes all we can do is acknowledge the damage and build something new from what remains. She nods slowly, absorbing this. Can I ask you something? Of course. How did you do it? Raise me alone after Dad died? Work full-time? Keep this house? Put me through college? She looks around the modest kitchen. I never realized until recently how hard it must have been. The question catches me off guard. In all our adult conversations, Samantha has never asked about the mechanics of those difficult years, the practical struggles of being a young widow with a child. One day at a time, I say simply. Some days better than others. That's not a real answer, she presses gently. You want details? I consider what to share, what might help her understand. I worked extra shifts at the library. I took in mending and alterations for extra money. I sold my grandmother's silver to pay for your SAT prep course. I went without new clothes for years so you could have what you needed for school." Her eyes widen. "I never knew about the silver. It was just things, Samantha. You were more important." "What about college?" "My tuition at UNC wasn't cheap, even with my partial scholarship." "I had some savings," I say carefully. "And I took a second job shelving books at the university library. That's why I couldn't come to many of your events on campus. I was usually working somewhere in the same buildings." This revelation visibly shakes her. "You worked on my campus? All those times I thought you were just too busy at home." "I didn't want you to worry, or feel obligated to spend time with your mother instead of making friends." I shrug. "It wasn't so bad. I got to see you sometimes, from a distance, walking to class, studying in the quad, living the life I wanted for you." Tears spill down Samantha's cheeks. "You did all that for me, and I repaid you by being ashamed, by hiding you away like some embarrassing secret." "We all make choices we regret," I say softly. "The question is whether we learn from them." The kitchen falls silent again, both of us lost in thought. Outside, streetlights flicker on. The neighbor's dog barks at some passing disturbance. Normal sounds of a normal evening, while inside this house, two women navigate the delicate terrain between hurt and healing. Samantha's phone buzzes insistently. She glances at it, her expression tightening. It's David. Again. "Are you going to answer?" She hesitates, then silences the phone. "Not yet. I need time to think, to figure out what I really want." She looks around the kitchen with new eyes. "I spent so long trying to escape this life, trying to become someone who fits into David's world. But sitting here now, I wonder if I've been running from the wrong things all along." A car pulls into my driveway, headlights briefly illuminating the kitchen. Nancy, right on schedule, coming to check on me as promised. "That'll be Nancy," I say, rising from my chair. "She's been worried." Samantha nods, suddenly looking uncertain. "Should I go?" I don't want to make things awkward. The question holds more weight than she realizes. Should I protect her from Nancy's judgment? Make excuses for her behavior? It would be the motherly thing to do, the path I've always chosen. Instead, I say, "If you want to be part of my life, Samantha, that means facing the consequences of your actions. Nancy is my friend. She knows what happened last night, and she cares about me. I won't hide you from that." She accepts this with quiet dignity. I understand. As I move to open the door for Nancy, I realize that something has fundamentally shifted between Samantha and me. For the first time, perhaps ever, I'm treating her not as my child to be protected, but as an adult responsible for her own choices. It feels like loss and liberation all at once, for both of us. Nancy stands on my doorstep, a casserole dish in her hands and concern etched across her face. When she sees Samantha behind me, her expression shifts from surprise to barely concealed anger. "I brought dinner," she says, holding up the dish. "But I see you have company." "Come in, Nancy," I say, stepping aside. "Samantha and I have been talking." Nancy enters cautiously, nodding stiffly at my daughter. The kitchen suddenly feels crowded with unspoken emotions. Nancy sets the casserole on the counter, her movements deliberate and measured. "I can go," Samantha offers, her voice small. "I don't want to intrude." "You're not intruding," I say, even as Nancy gives me a look that clearly disagrees. Nancy and I were just going to have dinner and talk. "About what happened last night," Nancy adds pointedly. Samantha pales but doesn't retreat. I deserve that. What I did was unforgivable. Yes, it was. Nancy agrees bluntly. She turns to me. Pat, do you want me to leave so you two can continue your conversation? The question hangs in the air, loaded with Nancy's protective concern. I look between my oldest friend and my only child, feeling the weight of divided loyalties. Actually, I say slowly, I think I could use some air. Nancy, would you sit on the porch with me for a few minutes? I turn to Samantha. We won't be long. Help yourself to more tea. Outside, the autumn evening has turned cool. Nancy and I settle into the worn wicker chairs that have occupied my small porch for 2 decades. The familiar creaking as we sit reminds me of countless evenings spent here with Jacob, watching the neighborhood children play, planning our modest dreams. Are you okay? Nancy asks once we're alone. When I left this morning, you were devastated. Now she's sitting at your kitchen table like nothing happened. Not like nothing happened, I correct gently. We've been talking for hours. She's different today. Humbled. Nancy snorts. Convenient timing, let me guess. Something happened with the perfect in-laws? Yes, I admit. But it's more than that. She seems genuinely remorseful. Of course she does, Pat. She burned her bridges with the fancy people, and now she needs you again. Nancy's voice softens. I'm not saying she doesn't feel bad. I'm sure she does. But honey, you've spent your whole life putting that girl first. Maybe it's time to protect yourself for once. I gaze out at the quiet street, considering Nancy's words. She's right about my history with Samantha. The pattern of sacrifice established so long ago, it feels like the natural order of things. Mother gives, daughter takes. But last night changed something fundamental in me, exposed a raw nerve I didn't know was still capable of feeling. I don't know what to do, I confess. Part of me wants to forgive her immediately, to go back to the way things were. But another part wants her to really understand what she did. Nancy finishes for me. Wants her to earn her way back. Is that terrible? To make my own daughter earn my forgiveness? Nancy reaches over to squeeze my hand. No, Pat. It's human. And maybe it's exactly what Samantha needs. We sit in companionable silence, watching as porch lights flicker on up and down the street. In the distance, children's laughter carries on the evening air. The Anderson kids playing one last game before dinner, their lives uncomplicated by adult betrayals and reconciliations. Can I tell you something? Nancy asks finally. Something I've never told anyone else? Of course. She takes a deep breath. You know my youngest, Michael? How he never visits, never calls, except to ask for money. I nod. Michael has been a source of heartache for Nancy for years, always in some kind of trouble, always needing rescue. 2 years ago, at Christmas, he stole from me. My mother's jewelry, the pieces I was saving for the girls, took them right out of my dresser while I was cooking dinner. Her voice remains steady, but I can hear the pain beneath it. I confronted him. He denied it at first, then blamed his girlfriend, then finally admitted he'd pawned everything for drug money. Oh, Nancy, I breathe. You never said... Because I was ashamed. Ashamed that my son would do that. Ashamed that I'd raised someone capable of such selfishness. She looks at me directly. But most of all, I was ashamed of what I did next. I told him to leave. Told him not to come back until he was sober and ready to make amends. Real amends, not just empty apologies. That must have been heartbreaking. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. She acknowledges. Harder than losing Richard. Harder than raising 4 kids on a teacher's salary. Because it went against everything I thought a mother should be. endlessly forgiving, endlessly available. Has he come back? I ask gently. Not yet. He calls sometimes, usually when he needs something. She sighs. But here's the thing, Pat. For the first time in decades, I feel at peace with myself. I know my worth now. I know I deserve better than being used by my own child. Her words resonate deeply. I think of Samantha sitting in my kitchen, waiting for my return. Of the years I've spent making excuses for her increasing distance, her subtle embarrassment about her roots, her gradual disappearance from my daily life. I'm not saying cut her off, Nancy continues. Every situation is different, but I am saying that forgiveness without change isn't forgiveness. It's permission. Permission to treat you the same way again. Inside the house, I can see Samantha through the window, her head bowed over her phone. Is she texting David? Checking her social media? Or perhaps like me, reflecting on how we arrived at this painful crossroads? Jacob would know what to do, I murmur, more to myself than to Nancy. Jacob would want you to be treated with respect, she replies firmly. Even by your daughter. Especially by your daughter. The certainty in her voice steadies me. Nancy knew Jacob almost as well as I did. They were friends long before we married, the three of us growing up in the same small community outside Asheville. She's right about what he would want. I should go back in, I say, rising from my chair. Thank you, Nancy, for everything. I'll head home, she says, standing as well. Unless you want me to stay? I'll be all right. Samantha and I need to finish our conversation. Call me later if you need to talk. She hugs me tightly. And Pat, whatever you decide, I support you. Just make sure you're deciding with your whole heart, not just the mother part. After Nancy leaves, I take a moment alone on the porch, gathering my thoughts. Through the window, I see Samantha place her phone down and look up expectantly as I open the door. The girl I raised, the woman she's become, both present in her anxious expression. Is Nancy okay? She asks as I return to the kitchen. She's fine, just concerned about me. I sit across from her again. She cares what happens to me. Samantha absorbs the gentle rebuke. I deserve that. It's not about what you deserve, Samantha. It's about honesty, about seeing things as they really are. I fold my hands on the table. Nancy reminded me of something important. That forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and that real reconciliation requires real change. I want to change, she says quietly. I want to be better than I was last night, better than I've been for years. What does that look like? I challenge gently. In practical terms, what would change? She considers this seriously, which gives me hope. The Samantha of yesterday would have offered vague reassurances, quick promises without substance. I need to reevaluate my marriage, she says finally. Not just because of what happened at brunch, but because of what led to last night. The values we've been living by, the choices we've been making. She twists her wedding ring again. I'm not sure David and I want the same things anymore. Or maybe we never did, and I was too busy trying to fit into his world to notice. And what about us? I ask, the question that matters most to me. What would change between us? Everything. Her eyes meet mine, steady and sincere. No more hiding you away. No more pretending I sprouted fully formed from elite soil. A small sad smile touches her lips. No more being ashamed of the sacrifices you made to give me the opportunities I've had. And if David doesn't agree, if his family doesn't approve, then that's their loss. A flash of the old Samantha emerges, the determined girl who worked her way through college, who never backed down from a challenge. I spent 3 years trying to be what they wanted. I'm done. I want to believe her. More than anything, I want to believe that the events of the past 24 hours have catalyzed a genuine transformation. But I've known my daughter for 35 years. Her patterns, her responses to pressure, her tendency to make promises in emotional moments that fade as normalcy returns. Samantha, I say carefully, I love you. I've loved you since before you were born, and I'll love you until my last breath. But love isn't a blank check. It doesn't erase consequences or bypass hard work. I know, she whispers. If we're going to rebuild our relationship, it needs to be on new terms. Terms that include mutual respect, honesty, and the understanding that I'm a person in my own right. Not just your mother. Not just a connection to a past you'd rather forget. She nods, tears filling her eyes again. I want that too. It won't be easy, I warn. Patterns like ours are hard to change. We've spent years establishing roles. Me as the ever-forgiving mother, you as the daughter who can take that forgiveness for granted. I don't want that anymore, she says, wiping at her tears. I want to be someone you can be proud of again. Someone who makes you feel valued, not... Her voice breaks. Not disposable. The word cuts through me, perfect in its terrible accuracy. Disposable. Exactly how I felt last night, standing in her doorway with my homemade pie. Where do we go from here? She asks when I don't immediately respond. I look at my daughter, truly look at her, and see both the child I raised and the woman who hurt me deeply. Both real, both true, both part of who we are to each other. In this moment, I make my choice, not the easy path of unrestricted forgiveness, nor the self-protective impulse to shut her out completely. Instead, I choose the harder road between these extremes. We start small, I tell her. We rebuild slowly, honestly, day by day, and we accept that things won't be the same as before. They'll be different. Maybe better if we do the work. She nods, understanding the boundary I've drawn. Not a wall, but not a wide-open door either. A threshold that can be crossed, but only with care and intention. I'd like that, she says softly. Outside, night has fully fallen. Through the window, stars are visible above the streetlights, constants in a changing universe. Like love, I think. Present even when hidden, enduring even when tested. What happens next, with Samantha, with David, with the life she's built and the one she might choose, remains uncertain. But here, in this moment, we've taken the first step towards something new. Something that honors both blood and dignity, both connection and self-respect. It will have to be enough for now. 3 weeks pass. Autumn deepens around Asheville, trees blazing in reds and golds, mornings crisp with the promise of winter. I settle back into my routines, volunteering at the library, tending my small garden before the first frost, meeting Nancy for coffee on Thursday mornings. The familiar rhythms comfort me, anchoring me during this time of uncertainty. Samantha calls every other day. Not long conversations, but consistent. She tells me about the small apartment she's rented downtown, about her decision to take a leave of absence from her marketing job, about the therapy sessions she started. She doesn't mention David much, though I know they're in counseling together, trying to determine whether their marriage can survive the fundamental shift in Samantha's priorities. We don't discuss that night, the moment at her door, the cruel words spoken, the silent drive home. We don't need to. It sits between us, acknowledged but not dwelled upon, a painful catalyst that forced necessary change. Today she's coming for lunch, the first time she'll be back in my home since that tearful afternoon 3 weeks ago. I find myself unusually nervous, checking and rechecking the simple meal I've prepared. Chicken soup made from my mother's recipe, fresh bread from the bakery down the street, apple pie for dessert. Nothing fancy, just honest food that's nourished our family for generations. At noon, the doorbell rings. Samantha stands on the porch, holding a small bouquet of yellow mums. She's dressed simply in jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. No designer labels, no carefully applied makeup. Just my daughter, stripped of pretense. "Hi, Mom," she says, offering the flowers. These reminded me of the ones Dad used to plant along the driveway. The thoughtful gesture touches me deeply. Jacob had indeed loved mums, planting them every fall to brighten our modest home. "They're beautiful. Come in." She follows me to the kitchen, her eyes taking in the familiar surroundings. Something smells amazing. Just soup. Nothing special. I place the flowers in a mason jar, we've never owned a proper vase, and set them on the table. Special to me. She hesitates, then adds, "I've missed your cooking." We settle at the kitchen table, the same one where we had our difficult conversation 3 weeks ago. I serve the soup, Samantha breaks the bread, and for a moment, the simple domesticity of the act feels both foreign and deeply familiar. "How's the apartment?" I ask as we begin to eat. "Small, quiet." She smiles slightly. "Honest. In a way the house never was. No rooms we never used. No furniture too expensive to actually sit on. And David." Her smile fades. "He's trying, we both are. But we want such different things now." She stirs her soup thoughtfully. "He can't understand why I've regressed, as he puts it. Why I'm no longer interested in country club memberships and dinner parties with the right people." "And why aren't you?" I ask, genuinely curious about this transformation. "Because none of it was real," she says simply. "We were all performing, me most of all. Always worried about saying the wrong thing, wearing the wrong outfit, revealing my background." She meets my eyes. "Ashamed of where I came from, which meant ashamed of you, of Dad, of everything that made me who I am." She takes a bite of bread, chewing thoughtfully before continuing. "The therapist says I was trying to escape my grief over Dad by reinventing myself, that by erasing my past, I could pretend he never existed, which meant he could never have died and left me." The insight strikes me with its painful accuracy. Jacob's death had devastated 11-year-old Samantha, leaving a wound neither time nor my love could fully heal. "That makes a certain sense," I say carefully. "It doesn't excuse what I did," she adds quickly. "Nothing could. But it helps me understand how I became someone who could hurt you that way." She reaches across the table to touch my hand briefly. Someone I never want to be again. We eat in comfortable silence for a while, the simple meal a balm to hurts, still fresh, but healing. Outside, a neighbor's wind chimes sing in the breeze, a familiar soundtrack to countless shared meals in this kitchen. "I saw Elaine yesterday," Samantha says suddenly, "at the grocery store." I raise my eyebrows, surprised. "How did that go?" "She pretended not to see me at first. Then, when that became impossible, she asked about David in that perfectly polite, perfectly cold way she has." Samantha's mouth quirks in a small smile. "I told her he was well, and that we were working through some family issues. Together." "What did she say to that?" "Nothing directly. Just made some comment about how, Blood always shows, eventually. Samantha shakes her head. 3 weeks ago, that would have devastated me. Yesterday, I just felt sorry for her. Sorry that she's so trapped in appearances that she can't recognize what really matters. The mature insight impresses me. This new Samantha, reflective, self-aware, unafraid of her origins, is someone I'm just getting to know. Someone I think I could genuinely like, not just love, because she's my daughter. Mom, she says as we finish our soup, I've been thinking. About what you said, that things won't go back to how they were before, that we're building something new. Yes, I want that too. Something healthier, more honest. She hesitates. But I'm scared of falling back into old patterns, of taking you for granted again when things get hard. That's a valid concern, I acknowledge, for both of us. So I thought maybe we could establish some new traditions, regular times to connect, to remind ourselves of what matters. She sounds uncertain, vulnerable in a way the old Samantha never allowed herself to be. Maybe Sunday dinners. Here, at your house? Just simple meals. Nothing fancy. The suggestion moves me more than I can express. In its simplicity lies profound meaning. A return to our roots, a celebration of our modest but genuine connection. I'd like that very much, I tell her. After lunch, as we wash dishes side by side, Samantha washing, me drying, the way we did when she was growing up, I feel a tentative peace settle between us. Not the unquestioning closeness of before, nor the painful distance of recent years, but something new. Something built on truth rather than obligation, on choice rather than expectation. As Samantha leaves, she hugs me. A real embrace, not the quick, perfunctory gesture she's offered for years. Thank you, Mom, she whispers. Not just for lunch, for giving me another chance, for showing me what real strength looks like. I watch her drive away in her modest used car, the luxury SUV apparently part of the life she's reevaluating, and feel something unexpected bloom in my chest. Not the uncomplicated happiness of fairy tale endings, but something richer, more nuanced. Hope laced with caution, love tempered with newfound self-respect. On the mantel, Jacob smiles from our wedding photo, his eyes crinkling at the corners just as they always did in life. I touch the frame gently, imagining what he might say if he were here. Well done, Pat. I can almost hear him whisper, well done.